The fear you don't face doesn't disappear. It becomes the very event you spent your life trying to avoid. You know exactly what you need to do. You have clarity, you have the will, sometimes you even have the time, and still you don't do it. Not because you're lazy, not because you lack discipline, but because of that feeling you've never quite been able to name. That something will go wrong in a way that will cost you far more than the project itself. Have you ever caught yourself postponing an important decision without being able to explain the real reason? Have you spent weeks with an idea in your head without putting it on paper, not for lack of time, but because of that diffuse resistance that shows up every time you get close to starting? Have you ever finished something, looked at it, thought it was good, and still didn't publish it, didn't send it, didn't show it to anyone? If the answer is yes to any of those questions, what you're going to understand in this video will change the way you see this pattern forever. Because the problem isn't where you think it is. And as long as you keep treating the wrong cause, there's something about this fear that almost no one notices. And it's exactly what explains why you stay stuck even when you know what you need to do. You're not afraid of failing. You're afraid that when you fail, something far greater than the project will be lost. Not the opportunity, not the time invested. The image you've built of yourself over the years, of someone capable, competent, someone who doesn't fail in public. That image is what's at stake every time you pull back. And as long as you don't see that clearly, you'll keep protecting it without even realizing you're doing it. Carl Jung called this the persona, the social mask we build for the world. And he warned of the same danger. When you confuse the persona with your identity, any threat to the image becomes a threat to your existence. Failing stops being information about an attempt. It becomes a verdict about who you are. That's what's holding you back, not laziness, not lack of method. An equation installed deep in your mind that says, if I fail, I lose something I can never recover. And that equation will keep governing everything you do until you figure out where it came from, what it's defending, and why it's completely wrong. Your mind is protecting you from the wrong thing. Fear of failure isn't weakness. It's intelligence applied in the wrong place. Viktor Frankl, an Austrian psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz and dedicated the rest of his life to understanding what keeps a person whole in the face of extreme suffering, described a phenomenon he called anticipatory anxiety. A person fears something so much that their own behavior ends up provoking exactly what they feared. Put it in your daily life. You're afraid your project will be criticized, so you never finish it, never publish it, never expose it. It dies in the draft, which is the most silent form of failure that exists. The kind that doesn't show up for anyone, not even for you, because it has no date, no name, only the permanent absence of something that could have existed. You're afraid of being rejected in a job interview, so you arrive insecure, hesitate in your answers, project exactly the fragility you wanted to hide. And you get rejected. The fear didn't protect you from the outcome. It guaranteed it. But here's what Frankl understood that most people don't. This cycle doesn't begin with cowardice. It begins with a mind genuinely trying to protect you. The defense system identified a real threat, the possibility of pain, humiliation, loss, and activated everything it had available. The problem isn't that you're weak. The problem is that your protection system is defending the image when it should be building the life. Identify an avoidance behavior you repeat, postponing, not sending, not publishing, not speaking. And ask yourself honestly, what I'm avoiding isn't the result, it's the risk of exposure. If the answer is yes, you don't have a discipline problem. You have an anticipatory anxiety problem. And those two problems have completely different solutions. But that's only the surface of the problem. because there's a deeper layer, one you even use as a sign of quality. And it's holding you back more than any obvious fear. Perfectionism isn't a high standard. It's a sophisticated escape. Alfred Adler said that behind almost every avoidance behavior lies a feeling of inadequacy the person has never named out loud. It's not that they think they'll fail at this specific task. It's that somewhere deep down there's an installed belief, sometimes since childhood, that they're not enough, that there's a standard they don't reach, that other people have something they don't, and that if they expose themselves enough, that will become obvious. And perfectionism is the intelligent response to that fear. If the standard is high enough, if you're never ready enough, you never have to truly take a risk. There's always a legitimate reason to wait a little longer, to refine more, to study more, to wait for the ideal moment. That's not dedication, it's procrastination dressed up as seriousness. The ideal moment isn't coming, you know that. But as long as it doesn't arrive, you don't fail. And not failing has become more important than living. The impossible standard you apply to your work before showing it to the world isn't making you better. It's keeping you invisible. The feeling of inadequacy isn't objective truth. It's an interpretation installed at a moment when you were too young to question it. You haven't proven you're insufficient. You've simply never challenged the belief that you are. And the only way to challenge it is by acting before you feel ready. And discovering, in practice, that the world doesn't collapse when you're not perfect. Take something you've been holding back for longer than you should. A project, an idea, a message, and publish it, send it, or present it at 80% of what you consider ideal. Observe what happens, not to the project, to you. But even when you act, even when you publish, even when you try, there's a deeper fear that no action resolves. And Kierkegaard was the only one who truly understood where it comes from. The dizziness you feel isn't fear of falling, it's fear of jumping. Kierkegaard wrote that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. Not as a poetic metaphor, as a precise diagnosis. When you're standing at a great height, what gives you vertigo isn't the fear of slipping, it's the awareness that you could jump. That freedom, that absolute power of choice that exists even where it shouldn't, is terrifying. And the greater the freedom available, the greater the vertigo. You have the freedom to try, to fail, to start again, to build something that didn't exist before with no guarantee whatsoever that it will work. That freedom isn't comforting, it's overwhelming, and fear of failure is, at its core, a direct response to it. An attempt to reduce the open possibilities in order to reduce the vertigo they cause. When you don't try, you eliminate uncertainty. You know exactly what will happen. Nothing. And nothing, for the mind that feels vertigo, is preferable to the unpredictable. But Kierkegaard spoke of a specific kind of suffering he called silent despair, of someone who is alive but not living, who spends their days fulfilling a list of obligations without ever asking whether that's actually the life they chose. This despair doesn't scream. It shows up as tiredness without cause, as a constant feeling that something is missing that you can't name, as the vague certainty that surfaces at 3 a.m. that you're wasting something. The cure for vertigo isn't to step away from the edge. It's learning to stand on it. It's recognizing that the freedom that frightens you is exactly the same freedom that allows you to build something real. You're not being cautious. You're choosing a smaller life. Nietzsche had no patience for euphemisms. For him, a life organized around avoiding failure wasn't a careful life. It was a small life. And smallness isn't a neutral position. It's an active choice made repeatedly, every day, every time you pull back from a possibility out of fear of what might go wrong. This choice disguises itself very well as prudence, as maturity, as realism. That's just how I am. I prefer certainty before acting. It's not the right moment. I need to prepare more. Beneath those sensible speeches lies a fear that was never examined. And unexamined fear doesn't disappear with time. It grows and it governs. The cost doesn't appear all at once. It accumulates in micro decisions, the conversation you didn't have, the project that stayed in the draft, the opportunity you watched pass because the moment wasn't ideal. Add up those costs, not the big dramatic ones, the small ones, the daily ones, the invisible ones. Their accumulation is what composes an entire lifetime of non-attempts. The mistake you'll make if you try isn't the failure. The failure is the life you'll look back on and not recognize as yours. It's arriving at the end with the smaller version of yourself, well-preserved and unscratched because you never put it at risk. That is the definitive loss. What you control is far less than you think. And it's everything you need. Marcus Aurelius governed the greatest empire in the world while facing endless wars, a plague that killed millions, and devastating personal losses. He had no guarantees, no certainties. What he had was a daily practice, to separate with precision what was within his control from what wasn't, and to act only within the first. Other people's judgment is not in your control. The final result is not in your control. How what you create is received, the opinion of those you respect, the success or failure of what you launch. None of that is in your control. What is the quality of your intention, the honesty of your effort, the decision to act despite uncertainty? That's not resignation. It's surgical precision. Spending mental energy fearing what you don't control is the most expensive waste that exists. And most people spend their entire lives doing exactly that without realizing they're burning the only non-renewable resource they have. You're not defending your reputation forever. You're making a decision now, with the information you have now, within the circumstances that exist now. If it goes wrong, you'll have more information. If it goes right, you'll have moved forward. Either way, you'll have truly lived, which is already infinitely more than the alternative offers. Marcus Aurelius didn't wait for courage to act. He acted, and serenity came afterward as a consequence of action, not as a condition for it. But knowing all of this, the origin, the mechanism, the cost, the way out, doesn't solve the most concrete problem. The fear is still there when you need to act. And there's a specific reason for that which no one ever told you. Fear doesn't go away before you act. It goes away after. Here's the point that undoes everything you believed about courage. You're waiting to feel ready, waiting for the fear to decrease before taking the next step, waiting for the insecurity to pass, for clarity to arrive, for confidence to appear first so you can then act safely. That's not going to happen. Not because you're different from others or because your fear is greater, but because the sequence is reversed. Courage isn't the absence of fear before action. It's what appears during action and solidifies after it. Every time you act despite the fear and the world doesn't collapse, you recalibrate. The alarm system that was firing for threats that didn't exist receives new information. I survived. The threat wasn't as big as it seemed. And next time, the alarm fires a little lower. Not because the fear disappeared, but because you have evidence that it was exaggerating. The muscle of acting despite fear only develops by being used, not by being studied, not by being understood, not by being analyzed, by being used. And that means something practical and uncomfortable. You need to fail on purpose, in controlled doses. Find a low-risk area and act before you're ready. Publish the imperfect text. Present the incomplete idea. Send the message without revising it for the 10th time. Not because imperfection is a value, but because the perfection you demand of yourself before acting is, in practice, a way of never acting. And the only antidote is the repeated experience of acting, failing, remaining whole, and discovering that the fear was lying about the size of the danger. You already know what you need to do. The fear you feel right now is a signal, just not the one you think. You're not going to wake up one day without fear. That day doesn't exist. What exists is a version of you that learned to read fear differently, that knows it isn't a signal of danger. It's a signal that something matters, that the things that matter most in life demand exactly what you're most afraid to offer, the possibility of failing publicly, visibly, with no guarantee whatsoever that it will work. The alternative, the life organized to avoid failure, to protect the image, to never expose yourself to outside judgment, isn't safe. It's just smaller. And it's not the mistakes you'll make if you try that will be smaller. It's the life you'll look back on and recognize as yours. Fear of failure isn't protecting you. It's consuming you from the inside, slowly, in a way that makes no noise, has no name, and shows up nowhere except in the feeling you get every time you see someone doing what you should be doing, every time you pass an opportunity and justify to yourself why the moment wasn't right. Every time you look at the draft that's been sitting there for months and look away. Jung showed that the shadow doesn't disappear when ignored. It grows. Frankl showed that the fear you don't face becomes the event you feared. Kierkegaard showed that unused freedom turns into despair. Nietzsche showed that a life unlived isn't prudent, it's small. Marcus Aurelius showed that action within what you control is the only territory that exists. You already have all of this. You already know what you need to do. The fear you feel right now is not a signal to stop. It's a signal that you've finally arrived at the right place.